Hello everyone, welcome to Professor Hancock's English videos. This video is going to be a little bit of a, I guess you could say, an introductory video for our American Literature 1 course for the unit concerning the revolutionary texts in America. But when I want to set this up, and I don't want to go into deep history and everything, because we can read on that. We can find a million YouTube videos on that and everything like that. That's fine. I want to give you a little bit of a different. I wouldn't even say different. I would say just my own way of a little bit of a background as to what's going on with the revolutionary times in America. Now, frankly, this starts earlier in the century, in the 1700s in Europe, in France, and especially France, but all over. But it's something called the Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason. Now, what that is, and like I said, it's primarily a European movement, but this was a movement to where it was a rejection of the old ways of the hierarchy of life, in a sense, with culture and society. And it brought about more individual freedom, more individual responsibility in that sense. At the time, and as a matter of fact, 100 years before this, the way it worked was your king ran everything. And under him, he had his own particular folks that ran things all the way down to the lowest of the low. And there was that particular order, a chain of being, and they even had that since Middle Ages and so on, as to who was who wasn't going to move up and down any kind of ladder. You were where you're supposed to be, and that's it. And it didn't go any further than that. However, the problem was it was really unfair in many ways. And in France, before their revolution, it was really, really bad. People were starving and dying and everything. And so they were just sick of it. And so the philosophers started to blossom new ideas. And the idea was that the king and queen were not God's representatives on this earth, and told everybody what to do. Everybody was their own individual creature that could make those decisions based on what God has given. So it was the higher being. I won't say God because the French Revolution especially turned atheistic. But there were many places where it was the higher being, the higher calling, or whatever you want to call it. Then it went down to the people. There was no king morally above anybody else. And so, with that being said, this is an idea that blossomed in its own way and most effectively in America, in the Americas. What you had King George telling and arbitrating everything over in the colonies, telling them what to do, taxing them like crazy, doing all kinds of bad stuff the Declaration of Independence will talk about. And so what happens is you have a handful of revolutionaries, very intellectual, very smart, brilliant men that blossomed and broadened that idea even more in an American sense that became the basis of the American Revolution and the United States of America. It is now the basis of our Constitution, like I said, Declaration of Independence. The whole structure of our society is based upon what we see in Enlightenment thought. So to bring this to a close, to kind of give you a little bit of a context as to what you need to be thinking about as you're going forward. Beforehand, in Europe especially, in Europe completely, it was the focus on how the king and queen were God's representatives on earth. So what they said, what they did was pretty much what God was saying to do and what he did and everything like that. So it was them. What they said, that was it. There was no freedom to people. Everything came from the king and queen. So if you bucked up against the king and queen, you were bucking up against God. Very bad thing. And then your eternal soul is in danger of hell's fire. So that was the beginning of, no, this isn't true. I think everybody has their own individual freedoms to do what they want to do, to become who they want to be, to become educated, especially women. Women's education really flew here. This is also something that became a grounding as we went forward with the abolition of slavery and things like that from Europe, even eventually into America and so on. This is where it all started here. So it was the idea of the individual governing themselves as a group or not or whatever, and that's what we're going to see here. Okay, so anyway, we'll take that and we'll continue over and move into the other specific videos about the reading texts.